We are talking listing presentation this week. So last week, if you missed it, we did talk about the pre-listing packet, the setting the listing appointment, finding sellers. So we talked about kind of up to, we've set the appointment, we've gone through the qualification to make sure they're ready, willing, and able to sell a property. We've booked the listing appointment, and then we dropped off what would be considered a pre-listing package. So we talked about that might include your information about yourself, maybe your marketing plan, your maybe options for staging. I would include a market analysis report, although I may not put kind of a range on there of what they could sell the property for on that market analysis. I'm really just wanting them to be able to review comps before I get there for the listing appointment. And then I also like to include copies of like the listing agreement, the seller property questionnaire, and the TDS, the transfer disclosure statement. And then as well as remind them that at the time of the listing appointment, they may want to have like a key available, an extra key available, and some other tidbits like that to help the process run along smoother. So we did all that. We dropped it off ahead of time. I like to drop it off in person. I like to do it with like a little pop by, something that's going to help me stand out from anybody else they may be talking to, and something fun. So it might be like a hand soap, right, with a little tag on it that says, looking forward to giving you a hand with your home sell, or something to that effect, right? Just something fun. If you go to Pinterest, you could Google, pre-listing pop buys. You'll see an endless supply of those. So anyways, so just kind of paying attention to that. And now we actually have the listing appointment. Okay. So that's what we're going to focus on today, is that listing appointment. There is no wrong or right way to, well, there might be a wrong way to conduct a listing appointment, but as long as it results in a signed listing agreement, I guess it's not wrong. There's no one way, right? This is your business. You can run it however you want to. So how I recommend, you may want to switch it up and do it a little differently. You may want to include something I don't talk about. So totally okay. Everybody does them a little differently. And something that you may want to do, especially as a newer agent or even as a seasoned agent, if you're having problems getting listing agreements signed, or you're nervous about that process, like talk to some of the more experienced agents in the office and ask them if they can role play their listing appointment with you. If you could be the potential seller and they could sit down and go through their listing appointment with you, so that you could kind of see how they move through their listing appointment and what they do. Keep in mind too that every time we have a class, I talk about systems and processes. Systems and processes are super important. And as you begin talking with other agents in our office about their listing agreements or listing appointments, you're going to find that those that some don't have a consistent method for it. Others that are working more in their sphere may be like, I don't even have a listing appointment like strategy or process. They should. So even if you're sitting down with your sphere, you should still treat it professionally and go through the entire process with them. So don't let that like hold you back or prevent you from doing your own, because you're like, well, I'm just going to work with my sphere too. No, have that listing appointment system and process in place. All right. We are going to talk about the listing appointment, tips for winning sellers and securing the listings. So not too many objectives today, but there's a lot of steps in there. So here we go. So, you've set yourself up for success, right? We talked about this by completing those first 3 steps in the listing process. You've utilized the pre-listing questionnaire that we talked about last week to qualify your seller, gather pertinent information, and have the listing appointment ready to go and set that date and time. I highly recommend that you confirm the date and time of the listing appointment the day of or the day before. It's also a good time to make sure that it's a good time, like when you drop off that packet, if you're going to drop it off on their doorstep, to ask them if they received the packet that you dropped off, and let them know that you're just confirming the appointment for, tomorrow at 3 p.m. and ask them if they have any time to make sure they look through that packet before you arrive. So that's a good way to kind of segue into that confirmation of the appointment. You are going to have already completed the preparation for the appointment, including gathering information, maybe even driving through the neighborhood, reviewing comparables. You're going to have an idea of if the property is as they say it is, as they painted the picture of this is what it should go on the market for, or the range. Usually it's kind of a range. And if the property needs more work than they said it is, or it's nicer than they said it was, maybe they really like downplayed their property, here's where those would fall as well. So you want to kind of have a solid idea of the entire spectrum of properties in that neighborhood and what they should be hitting the market price-wise on, whether they need work or whether they're fully renovated, right? So we know what that range is, and we know how to adjust based on the condition of the actual property. You've delivered that pre-listing packet to the client, as we already discussed, and now it's time for the listing appointments. Okay, this is going to be one of the most important aspects of your business, so it's crucial that you follow, again, that effective and systematic plan, right? You've worked super hard to get to this point, so we don't want to leave our listing appointment without taking the listing. Okay. And again, we talk about being listing based because it frees up your time. You can host more listing appointments in the time that it takes you to show buyers properties. You can leverage those listings for additional leads. So our goal is at least 50-50 listings to buyers that you should be working with, and maybe even closer to 60-40. So just kind of keep that in mind. The listing presentation can be broken into 4 separate sections. The first one is going to be the greeting and the outline of your presentation. Okay, that's going to be when you show up to the property. We'll talk more about that. You're just going to let them know what the plan is for the appointment. You want to do a home tour. Stage 2, connect with the client. You're going to do the presentation, including pricing and marketing strategies. And then you're going to close for the listing and complete the paperwork. The goal is to have them sign that listing agreement while you're sitting at their table. Okay, I know that it looks prettier when you send it out for electronic signatures. I realize that. We're not worried about pretty. We want them to commit. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. Make sure you arrive early to your appointment. So if our appointment is booked for 11 o'clock, we should not be showing up at 11:05. You should hit that neighborhood at 10:50 at the latest, so that you have time to kind of drive through the community. You can note anything that might be relevant to the appointment. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have time to drive through. We know what parks are there. We know if there's amenities for that neighborhood, what they look like, what condition they are, how far they are from the property. Right, we want to know all of that. We still don't want to arrive if our appointment's at 11. We don't want to knock on their door at 11 o'clock. We want to knock on their door about 10:57, 10:58. We don't want to show up too soon, because I guarantee you these sellers, even though you told them leading up to it that you're not worried about the housekeeping of the property, that you're looking more at the condition. We're not putting it on the market today, and so it's okay if it's a little messy. You're not going to judge them on that. They're going to work really hard leading up to this listing appointment to make that house spotless. And if you show up 10 minutes early and knock on their door, you may stress them out. So we want to show up early, but not too early to the appointment. Okay, but we do want to get to that neighborhood early. You can make a couple circles around to make sure you kind of understand the layout, the other properties that are out there, what other homes are on the market, what do they look like from the outside. It may even be a good time, like show up 30 minutes early, make some appointments at other listings in the neighborhood if you haven't seen them. Take a quick peruse through those listings so you know what the competition is in that neighborhood. You could do that a couple days before. You could do that the day of. That way you have an idea when they're like, oh, my neighbor's house, it was listed at 600,000 and ours is bigger than theirs. Then that gives you the ability to be like, yeah, I've actually been through that property, and you're right, yours is larger. However, they have top of the line updates and upgrades that they did just to sell the property. So they're all like brand new floors, new appliances. You know, they knocked a wall out, right? So their updates are a little bit better than yours, which is why we're talking about this price, right? So that way you have firsthand knowledge of what that property looks like. You want to make sure that you dress the part. So remember that you are a real estate professional. You should dress accordingly. On that, I also recommend that you be you. Now, I don't think you should show up in a hoodie and sweatpants. Even me, who is like the hoodie queen, I don't think you should show up in a hoodie and sweatpants to your listing appointment. I do think you should dress professionally. Does that mean you need like a 3-piece suit? No, probably not, but you should look nice. Remember, you're helping these people sell the largest asset that they own for the most part. So you want to look like somebody that can handle that process for them. So kind of keep that in mind. You also want to be neat, organized, and well prepared for the appointment. You want to turn your phone ringer off or to vibrate. If you don't have small children that might be trying to contact you, you may even want to leave your phone in the car. Okay, just so it's not a distraction. Oftentimes I bring mine with me because I open up the notes as I'm doing the walkthrough. I'm making notes of things that they should do to the house prior to going on market. But you can do that on a piece of paper or a notepad as well. When approaching the front door, right, we're heading in to go knock on their door, make a note of anything relevant to curb appeal. Okay. Remember, the curb appeal is the first thing people see when they pull up, and it's actually, which people don't talk about this, it's the last thing people see when they're driving away. It is the first and the last impression of that house. Okay, so it's important to have good curb appeal. So you may want to make some notes of things that should be cleaned up, changed, whatever added to make it have better curb appeal. Oftentimes it's as simple as adding like, one of those plant potter things that you can buy at like Walmart or Home Depot that have, 3 or 4 different flower types in them that's already blooming and fabulous. Sometimes it's as simple as just buying something like that to add a pop of color to the porch because everything else is clean and nice, but just make some notes. When knocking on the door, get close enough to knock and then take a couple small steps backwards so that you're not crowding the door when they open it. We don't want to look like we're going to bust into their house the second they open the door. Greet your clients warmly and professionally. Offer to remove your shoes even if they don't ask you to. It just shows a level of respect for them and their home regardless of condition. Make sure you wear socks with your shoes because if they open that door and their floors are disgusting, you're going to want some sort of barrier between your foot and their floors. Still doesn't negate the fact that you should offer to remove your shoes. And they may be like, no, it's totally fine. Other times they might be like, yeah, please do. And you're like, oh, this is gross. I shouldn't have asked that. I'm barefoot, right? Or my socks have holes. Please don't do that. Wear nice, pretty socks. Okay. You want to take and keep control of the appointment. Okay. If asked where you would like to sit, suggest the kitchen table. There's a whole process to that. Decisions are usually made at the kitchen table, right? Important decisions are made there. It also gives them a place where they can lay out papers and look at it instead of trying to hold them sitting on the couch. So the kitchen table is a great place, or the dining table. Oftentimes, if you have your option of like the small breakfast nook in the kitchen versus the formal dining table, I would go with the table in the kitchen, the breakfast nook, because that's probably, the actual decision-making table. They probably use the dining room table very little, the formal one, except for holidays and important events. So I would go for the more informal table. Let's see here. You want to maintain control and not lose control of the appointment. So if you lose control of the appointment and the sellers start running that, it could throw you off your game and cause you to lose the listing. So the way to maintain control is to ask them questions. So if they start asking you questions, answer their question and turn it back around with a question to them. Okay, that's how you're going to get back in control of the conversation instead of them berating you with questions. When sitting down, be sure to face all decision makers. You want to be able to see the reactions that they have as they happen, rather than having to look left or right to judge one at a time. In addition to that, during your listing presentation, you want to mirror and match the seller's body language and tonality. Okay, so if they're talking really slow, you want to make sure to kind of match that speed with your voice because that's what they're comfortable with. If you've got somebody that's talking slow, you come in and you're like, oh, let's do this, and I'm going to do this, and here's how we market, and this is what we do. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. This is not the person for us. Okay, and in the same aspect, if you've got sellers that are like, oh, hi, welcome, come in. Where would you like to sit? Oh, perfect. How would you like to do that? Right, and they're like moving pretty quick. They have an upbeat tone. and you come in and go, oh, yeah, well, what I would like to do is they're going to be like, oh, I don't know if this person's right. They're like kind of tentative. I'm not sure they're like the bulldog that we need. So we want to mirror and match that tonality and speed in their voice, as well as body language. So if they're standing with their arms crossed, like, or sitting with their arms crossed, like, do the same thing. And then slowly over time, start to relax your arms, lean them on the table, spread them out. You'll find that they will match that as well, that will help to kind of diffuse the tension in the room. If they're open, then don't, sit with your arms closed if they're not, because then they're going to feel like you're closed off and standoffish. So we want to mirror and match the tonality, the speed, and the body language at which they are using so that they feel most comfortable. Let's see here. I would, when I come in, be like, oh yeah, let's meet at the kitchen table. What I would like to do first is do a home tour. I would just like to do a quick walkthrough of your home. And while I do that, I'm going to leave you some homework to take care of. And I'm just going to do that quick walkthrough. Well, we want to show you through the home. And I understand that. And there will be time for you to take me through all the features and everything of your home. But when I walk through it this time, I just want to get a good idea of what a buyer is going to see when they're walking through your home. And you're not going to be here to tour all the buyers through your home. So I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough. I'm going to make some notes, and then we'll come back and we'll sit down at the kitchen table. And while I do that, and then we'll kind of talk about, answer any questions or concerns that you might have, talk about that packet I dropped off yesterday, talk about the marketing plan, kind of talk about timing and what that looks like for you all. And while I do this walkthrough, if you guys could take care of writing down the 10 most important features of your home for me, right? What are the 10 things you like most about your property, right? That now we've given them something to do while we're doing our walkthroughs. So they're not following us around. Okay. Any questions so far?
No, thank you.
Fabulous. All right. So once you've outlined the presentation, right, we talked about what you're going to do. We're going to tour that property. We're going to have them fill out the top 10 features of my home tool. I don't think I actually have that one. I may, if we do, Abby will find it and get it to you guys when you log your attendance. But otherwise, just make something fun and creative, just a page that has the top 10 favorite features of my home on the top. So if they have something to fill out while you're doing the tour. Let's see here. As you tour the home, I would take notes. Okay. My goal is to get a feel for the condition of the bedrooms, the condition of the bathrooms, what the kitchen looks like, what the hallways look like, right? I'm just doing a quick walkthrough of the property, but while I'm doing it, I'm taking notes. Oh, bedroom 1 needs them to clear out one of the dressers. There's 2 dressers. It makes it feel crowded. Bedroom 2, they've got the bed pushed against the wall. They need to pull that away from the wall and add a nightstand over there instead of at the end of the bed. Right. So I'm making notes as I'm walking through the property so that when people come to see it, it's going to appear large and spacious. It may be like declutter closet, or it may be fixed closet door. Maybe there's one hanging off. Who knows, right? So anything that you note, just kind of jot it down so that you have those notes that you can share with them at a later time. The other thing that I'm looking for is when we go through like the main sections of the property, or like the living room or family room or dining room, or if we're walking through the master bedroom to get to the bathroom, is it easily accessible, or is my line of travel blocked by stuff? And if it's blocked by stuff, then we want to make a note to rearrange furniture or change the layout so that it flows nicely, so that people can move through the home without having to trip over furniture and nightstands and such like that. So you're going to do that. I recommend that you have a system in place for your walkthrough. I usually like to kind of start at the front door and then work my way around the house to the left, all the way to the right, seeing whatever there is to see as I make my way around the house that way. So it's going to vary house to house, but that's kind of how I like to work. I don't know why I go counterclockwise versus clockwise. Don't ask. But that's the way that I go. That doesn't mean it's the right way. You might be like, I always start in the kitchen and then I move to the dining room and then the family room. I look in the backyard, I check the garage, and then I work my way to the bathrooms and the bedrooms. It really doesn't matter. Just kind of have your system in place. Again, your goal here is that the sellers are sitting at the table filling out their form. You're doing the walkthrough. If they insist on walking through the property with you, that's okay. Too, although I would really encourage them to sit down and complete the homework assignment so that you can do it on your own. If they walk through it with you, chances are it's going to take 2 or 3 times longer to walk through the property than if you had walked through it on your own. So it's just going to lengthen the time of the appointment. All right. Once you've done the walkthrough, you're going to sit down at that kitchen table. Remember, we want to have eye contact with all parties that are the sellers of the property so that we're not having to like look back and forth. We kind of want them in front of us. I would almost maybe let them sit down first. Oh, you guys sit down. Oh, the other thing too, just a little heads up. If they offer you a glass of water, even if you're like, man, I don't know, this house is kind of questionable. I don't even know if their dishes are clean. Don't turn them down. Please say yes, and then at least take a sip of the water. It's just good etiquette, and it allows them to start to feel more comfortable with you because now not only are we sitting down at our kitchen table, but I've offered you some water and you've accepted. And so it just kind of changes the atmosphere of the room when you do so. Let's see here. We always want to make sure that we lead with a value when we sit down to talk about the listing process. You generally want to, most sellers are pretty anxious to hear about the market value of the price of their home, and they may push you to begin there. But you don't want to jump into pricing before you've effectively sold them on you and your strategies. So you kind of want to move that to the end, right? Because we don't want to start out with an argument of why their home is worth 600 when they think it's worth 650,000. We kind of want to end with that, not start with it. Okay. So a good way to introduce yourself would be, hey, I want to thank you for the opportunity to work with you. I know that you have many choices of real estate professionals, and I don't take that knowledge lightly. In fact, no doubt you are anxious to learn the results of my market research, and we'll get to that right away. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to take just a couple minutes first to review your hiring criteria, along with the review of my qualifications. Would that be okay? Right? And they're gonna be like, okay, that makes sense. You've already like addressed the fact that you're going to talk about pricing here in a minute and the marketing strategy, but let's talk about hiring criteria. So we want to find out like, what are they looking for in an agent, right? And then we want to address how we can fulfill those needs. We don't want to be defensive, but we just want to work those into our presentation because we want to address all of those things of what they're looking for. Right? So it might be something like, what's important to you when choosing a real estate professional? Oh, it's important to me that they're honest. That makes sense. Why is that important to you? Right? Let's ask those questions. Let's ask those, why is that important to you? Right? What else is important to you in hiring a real estate professional? Well, it's important that somebody checks in with me on a regular basis. Wonderful. What does a regular basis look like to you? Oh, well, I think we should hear from them every couple of days, if not every day. Okay, perfect. Right? What else are you looking for in a real estate agent? Right? So we're going to ask those questions until they run out of things. We're going to dig deeper so that we have full clarity on what it is that they're looking for. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Something that you may want to respond with then after we kind of get to the bottom is, is that, you know, when I asked you what was important to you in choosing the real estate professional, you said that you wanted someone who communicates with you on a regular and timely basis. And to you, that means frequent updates on activities, showing, and feedback from buyers and their agents, correct? You also said that you wanted a professional, and that means someone's with polish, experience in the industry, and someone who can speak and write well. Is that also correct, right? Something else you mentioned was getting a step-by-step assistance with the paperwork and help throughout the escrow closing process of the transaction, right? Is there anything else that you thought of that's important to you? Right? So we can summarize those items. If there is, you can make a note of it. You want to handle it at some point in the presentation, right? And then next you want to kind of outline your experience. So this is where we don't usually start with selling yourself and the company first. In fact, I would say selling the company is very lowest on my priority list. But we do want to address, like, if experience in the industry is important to them and somebody who's a real estate professional, then we want to address that up front with, you know, here's my history. And if you're a newer agent and you don't have a lot of experience, you can bank on the experience of your mentor, right? So you can add that in with your experience. If not, you can loop in the experience of the company. Now's a good time to bring that up, right? Like, hey, and as a company, we have over 100 agents. We always market our properties internally before they even hit the market so that we can start building anticipation amongst the other agents and their clients in our office. As well as, right, so we can start building on that as well. Let's see here. Owners often make their listing decision based primarily on the relationship that they're going to have with you. And so having that relationship and building that rapport, having integrity, is going to be super important. Oh, the other thing we talked about, mirror and matching. Sometimes, especially with sellers, usually buyers are pretty excited about buying a home. Sometimes sellers aren't super excited about selling their property. Like Amanda was talking about, she had a listing appointment with a family who is getting ready to sell their house to move closer to family, which is exciting. And they love their house and it has a lot of emotional value to them. And so they're sad about it. So if you came in and you're like, I'm so excited to help you sell your property, this is going to be great, you're going to get to move on to the next stage of your life. They're going to be like, this isn't the agent for me. Like, I need somebody who's going to empathize with the fact that we're a little sad about selling this property. Like, yes, we're excited about moving closer to family, but this is closing a chapter of their lives that they loved and that they enjoy the memories that they've made in that house. And so just kind of keep that in mind as well as you're having these conversations. So you can talk about the cutting edge, right? Your marketing plan, how you market the property, or cutting edge technology that you have through Realty One Group, the website, anything that's going to add value if you market it on social media, if you do any print advertising, if you're going to door knock the neighborhood to make sure their neighbors are aware, so because oftentimes buyers come from people the neighbors refer. If you're going to host open houses, right? Whatever those are, we want to make sure that we talk about all of those points as well. In addition to that, we want to make sure that we address any other options that we have, right? Like we've talked about, like what kind of photography do we have available? Our basic package that I cover the cost of includes photos of the interior and exterior of your property. I don't think your property warrants drone photography because it's just not a big enough space. People can get a pretty good idea from regular photos. If it's vacant, you may talk about the fact that we can do virtual staging, or that you could do actual staging with a stager if they opt to. That's staged homes generally sell faster and for a higher price. So that might be something that you want to address with them. So whatever options you have available, you want to make sure that you've made those known to the seller in one way or another. Just making sure I covered everything. You're going to tailor your presentation. Your ultimate goal is you're going to go through kind of your pre-listing package, right? We're going to talk about your marketing plan. You're going to talk about your resume. You're going to talk about who the company is. And again, I would spend as little time as possible. Our main goal is to find out, number one, what they're looking for in a real estate agent. And then we want to cover those as we're going through that packet. And number two, we want to find out what's driving them forward. What's their time frame look like? What's their why to moving? What's that going to do for them, right? That's always a good question. Oh my gosh, that sounds exciting that you're going to move closer to family. What's that going to do for you in the future, being closer to your grandkids, right? How are you gonna feel when you can, it's a 10-minute drive instead of an hour and a half drive? Oh my gosh, this is gonna be so great because I'm gonna get to see them so much, more frequently. I'll get to be part of their daily life, right? So we want to dig into that, into their why. And we want to ask questions like, what's important to you about that? What does that do for you? What does that look like? Right? So that we're painting that picture and getting them kind of excited about this process. So that they're like, oh my gosh, this person really understands me, right? And this is the person that I want to sell my house with. So we want to build that rapport. When we get to the CMA report, we want to review the comps, talk about it. We should have already in that pre-listing questionnaire asked them what they thought their home was worth. So we're going to have an idea of whether we're going to be right on target with our suggestion of what they were thinking, whether we're going to come in a little higher than what they were thinking, or whether we're coming in below what they thought their house was worth, right? So that comes into play of, here are the comps. These were included in that packet that I dropped off with you. I included a wide range of comps. Some of these need quite a bit of work and others are fully renovated. Where do you feel like your home fits in that? Oh, well, it's not like top of the line. I saw the neighbor's property and it's not as updated as theirs, but it's definitely not a fixer. I would agree with you. It's kind of in the middle, like these three comps right here. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think those match, right? It should have a couple of extra pictures of the interior of those properties so that they have a visual of kind of, here's the 6 comps or whatever, however many you have. And where does yours fall as far as condition in this lineup of properties, right? We're helping them direct themselves into where their property should be priced. Okay. We may want to discuss months of inventory. So we set up the expectation of how long their home is going to be on the market based on the current market, right? We may want to talk about, here are the sold listings, and these are important because, when your home goes into contract, the appraiser is going to base their value, their opinion of the value of the property based on the sold properties. However, when we look at the active properties or pending properties, right, that's our competition. Those active properties, those are those ones that are on the market with us. And those that are pending and contingent, those already have accepted offers, which tells us that they were priced in a strategic way to help them get accepted offers, right? So we want to show them all of those. We want to talk about it. We want to talk about why it's important. Let's see here. So we talked about the competition. And then you may want to then go, so what I would recommend, right? We all agree that your home is most like these 2 homes in the middle, right? Or this home at the top end. So I would recommend that we price it in this range. And I usually like to do like a $10,000 to $15,000 price range. Okay, so if those homes in the middle are selling like 570 to 590, I might be, hey, we should probably be like 575 to 585. Right? Or I know this home is really kind of the nicest home that's sold in this neighborhood, and your home's really comparable to that, except yours is actually a little larger and your lot size is bigger. So normally I don't recommend this, but that one was listed at 600,000. I may recommend that you list somewhere between like 590 to 610. Right? I think that the market will speak for itself, right? If we're getting multiple offers or kind of whatever is going on, we never want to price ahead of the market. So we kind of want to know, where are the comps at that have sold? Where are the properties at that are active and under contract? Kind of, where is the market going? Is it going up or down? And we want to price appropriately for that. It's nice when you're in a neighborhood that is still receiving multiple offers, because then as long as you price aggressively, hopefully it'll draw it up, or you've got a highly desired property. Versus one that's maybe sitting a little bit longer, then we want to make sure we really do price it competitively, and that we price it where we think it should sell. Because if we're not getting multiple offers, it may not drive it above that number, but we don't also want to price it so high that it sells below and that it sits. Okay, so we want to make sure that we present that pricing strategy, that we talk about the months of inventory or the average days on market. We want to talk about the competition. We want to talk about the sold comps, and then we'll make our recommendations. Usually what happens is when I make my recommendation of here's where I would recommend listing it, somewhere between 575 and 585. How does that feel to you? Yeah, that's actually exactly kind of what we were thinking, or that's a little higher than what we were thinking. Are you sure you think we can list it that high? Well, yeah, absolutely. But if you want to be conservative, we could list it towards that lower end, like 575. And then we can let the market kind of adjust that price as necessary. Does that sound good to you, right? Or, oh, that's a little lower than what I was thinking. I know, when we talked about it before, I know you thought your house was worth closer to 600,000, but we've got this comp up here that was listed at 600,000 that sold. And we all agreed that that one's a little nicer than your property, correct? As far as what the updates and renovations and stuff that were done. Yeah, that makes sense. Right? So we want to make sure that we always support it with that and always ask them, how does that feel to you? We want to kind of then back it up with some facts and details, but we also want to empathize with them based on kind of what their feelings are regarding the pricing. Any questions about that? We also want to be prepared as well, right? If they're like, well, yeah, and I realize you've got these 5 houses that are similar to ours, but that one across the way, that one sold for 650,000. Like, how come my house isn't worth that, right? We need to know the neighborhoods because we might need to know that, oh, that neighborhood across the way, that's a newer neighborhood and those properties sell for a little higher, or they sell for more because they're right there at the park, or none of them have rear neighbors, right? So we want to know the other competition further out because when they pull those comps up, we want to be able to advise them as why those would not be good comparables. All right. The listing, market value, right? So once you've agreed at a price range, so if they're like, okay, well, that range feels good to me, right? We gave them a range. We can let them know that, hey, like market value might stand here, which opens it up to 60% of the potential buyers. If we price it slightly below market value, then we have 75% of the buyers looking at your property versus if we price it over market value, now we've reduced our buyer pool to 30%. Right? So kind of where do you want to fall in this range? So you can always copy this graph and use it in your pre-listing packet and then as part of your listing presentation. Right? So if we like put the range on here, if we're like, oh, well, I set a range of 575 to 595 up here, right? That's kind of our range. What we're really hoping for is that we're going to price it at like 585 would be market value. Michelle, that's a great question. You may have to make it. I can actually screenshot it and I can throw it in the chat box because I don't think I have a separate slide for that. So let's see if everyone. Oh, here we go. Capture. Let's try that. Ta-da! Look at that. I captured a screenshot. It's a Zoom feature. Let me know if that works for you. If not, I can send you a different one. Right. So this gives you that ability to be able to kind of strategically price it by using this one as well. I can hear it right. One of the objection handlers or one of the scripts for this is, I can guarantee your home will sell. I just can't guarantee the price. All I can do is report what the market data shows. And what we must do together is choose that starting point where we are both comfortable with, and we can go from there. Ultimately, the buyers are going to tell us what your property is worth. Does that make sense? And they're going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. Right. Oh, it's because it didn't send yet. Hold on. All right, there we go. All right, once we've talked about our marketing strategy, we've backed it up with whatever they're looking for in an agent with who we are and who our company is. Once we've looked at the comparables, we've kind of agreed on that price range that they're comfortable with. Then what we want to do is we're going to ask for the listing and complete the paperwork. Okay. One of the things here is we want to be patient. We don't want to rush this process, because if they start feeling us rush them through it, they may be more standoffish and like, oh, I'm too nervous to sign something now. We want to ask questions, right? Stay in control of the discussion, stay in control of the conversation. You can encourage questions, right? Encourage that discussion. And again, include that seller in the decision-making process by asking things like, how does that feel to you? What are your thoughts on that? Right? If they ask a question and you're like, man, I don't even know what they're getting at, you can go, what's important to you about that? Oh, well, I just want to make sure that we have options available for photography, that that we want to make sure that we don't, who knows, maybe they're like, oh, well, we just don't want the closets in the photos. And you're like, oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, I hardly ever do closets in photos anyways, because they never photograph well. So if your closets aren't cleaned out by the time we're ready to start photos, it's totally okay. We're not going to take pictures of them anyways. And they'll be like, oh, okay, now I'm ready to move forward, right? Or, well, gosh, you talked about all these things that we need to do to get the house ready for sale, and that's feeling a little overwhelming right now. So what does this look like? You might be like, well, perfect. Well, you said that you wanted to be closer to your family by the end of summer so that you could be there for when they start school. So, properties are moving pretty quick right now. The average days on market to an offer is about 2 weeks, right? So if we want to be there by the beginning of August, we probably need to be on the market at the very latest by the beginning of July. Okay, that gives you about 3 weeks. Do you think 3 weeks is good for you to be able to start this process of preparing to move? Oh yeah, 3 weeks. Perfect. Very good. The week before we go on market, we would like to have it clean enough and ready to take photos. But again, places like your garage and your closets, those don't need to be cleaned up before we take photos. Does that make sense? We're not going to include those in the photos anyways. Oh yeah, so I can like stash stuff out there so that I'm ready for photos. Absolutely, right? And now we've like kind of talked about that time frame with them and what that's going to look like and kind of what to expect. It may be an issue that they're like, man, yeah, we want to be closer to family. And we're going to sell this house, and now we're worried about being homeless. And they may not have brought that up yet. So you may need to like head that off and ask them like, so you've talked about moving closer to family. Are you going to start looking at properties now? Are you thinking you're going to wait until your property sells to look at properties? Would it be helpful if we try to negotiate into any offers that we accept, like a 1 to 2 week period of time where after the property closes or sells, you could stay in the property? No, it's okay, because we can actually stay in our RV at our family's house. Okay, so you don't need any time after close escrow. So if we get this on the market the beginning of July, we get an offer right away, and we end up actually closing maybe by like the 20th or the 25th of July. Are you going to be okay with that? Oh, man, that is quick. Yeah, I mean, we do want to move by the end of summer, but gosh, if we could be in the property until like July 31st, that would be ideal, right? Feel them out, ask them questions, encourage that discussion, help to alleviate any of those unknown factors, right? So a lot of times people refuse to move forward because it's the fear of the unknown, and it's the fear of not encouraging that discussion and getting them to ask questions, and you asking questions so you can get to the depths of their hesitation to move forward. And a lot of times it's just fear of the unknown. They don't know what to expect. This is their first time selling a house. They don't know what the process looks like. They want to understand the time frames, but sometimes they don't even know to ask those questions. So just kind of think about that as you're kind of moving them in that direction. It's also a good idea to start asking for some soft closes, right? So at this point, by the time we're asking for that signed listing agreement, we've reviewed their motivations. We've talked about timing, their concerns, and their criteria, right? We've addressed those as part of our listing presentation. We've discussed our qualifications. We've discussed market info. We have discussed what the current buyer situation looks like and what the competition looks like. We've presented all of that research to them, the comparable homes, right? We've talked about the list price. So right now, what we want to do is we want to secure, we've got an agreement on the best price. We've presented our market plan and we've answered and handled any questions and objections that they may have. Okay, so the next thing is that we're going to ask for them to sign the listing agreement. Okay, we want to make it a positive, we want to make a positive, enthusiastic declaration before asking for the business. And you may need to, again, temper this based on them. Okay, so it might be something like, I'm really excited in helping you get your home sold, and I'm confident that we will be successful. Are you ready to get your home ready to go on the market now so that we can get you into your new home by the end of summer? Right? And you may not say, I'm really excited. You may say, I really appreciate you trusting me with the sale of your home as you move into this next stage. And I understand that you're going to have good days and bad days as we move through this process of getting your home sold. You have a lot of memories here. You've lived in this house for a long time, and that's okay to kind of have mixed feelings, to be excited about the fact that you're moving closer to family, but to be sad that you're selling this home. But are we ready to start that process? Right? So we may want to temper it and adjust it based on where the sellers are at and what their plans are and how excited they are to move. In addition to that, we may want to ask, again, some soft close questions. Okay, and what are soft close questions? We want to get those sellers saying yes ahead of time. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I just want to make sure that I've handled and answered any questions that you may have regarding the sale of your property. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, perfect. And again, we talked about, a price range of $575 to $585. We actually agreed that going on the market probably at like $580 is ideal. Are we still in agreement on that? Yep, that sounds good. Perfect. We also talked about the fact that we're going to try to aim for an on-market date of that first week of July, with the intention that we're going to close sometime between the end of July, mid-August. Does that still sound good to you? Yeah, that sounds good. Perfect. Then what I would like to do next is have you complete the listing paperwork. Right? On our listing paper, right? So we already got them saying yes. We've got them in the habit of moving forward. Totally good. If they're like, oh yeah, well, we would like to, but we actually have another agent that we're interviewing for this job, that might be a good time to say, perfect. Well, I know that we have spent a lot of time together today, that you agreed that you liked my marketing plan, that I offered everything you wanted in terms of digital marketing, paper marketing. My strategy is to get your property sold. We agreed on a sales price. So if you want, we can go ahead and complete the paperwork today, and I can call that other agent and cancel that appointment for you. That way you don't have to be the one to let them down. I can do it for you. And they'll be like, okay, that sounds great, right? They don't want to reject people, so they don't want to tell somebody no, but we also don't want them meeting with that other person, so we can offer to cancel it for them. With our listing paperwork, we want to fill out as much in advance as possible. We know their names. We already know whether it was in a trust or not. We know the address, the APN. We're going to leave that sales price blank. We may go ahead and fill in the listing period based on whatever your typical is. You may also fill in the commission that you want to receive, or you may leave that blank so that you can have the discussion with them about what today's market looks like with regards to commission, what they are paying you, and then what the options are to pay a buyer's agent and why it might be important or not important to go ahead and offer commission to a buyer's agent. All the other non-crucial paperwork that can be handled electronically. So at the listing appointment, where generally if I'm sending out a listing agreement for signatures electronically, I've got about 10 other documents that go with it. I'm not going to torture them there at the table with that. It's just going to be the listing agreement and then the appropriate paperwork that goes along with that, the agency disclosure, the PRBS, the wire fraud, right? The Consumer Privacy Protection Act, all those things that go along with that listing agreement. We're going to include that because you can't separate that out. And we're going to ask them to sign. Okay. This might be a good time, right? We're going to write in the price. If you've got printed items on there and now we're handwriting some of it, just make sure that anytime you handwrite onto it, that you have them initial that area. So if we're handwriting the price that we agreed on, we're going to initial that. And you may have the listing agreement in front of you, right? When we're asking our soft close questions. Hey, so just making sure, like we agreed that 580 was going to be the on market price. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and put 580 in on this document. Now, keep in mind too, that I have a little clause here because we're about 3 to 4 weeks from going on market. We're going to come back and re-review that price right before we go on market. So if the market's changed a little bit, either gone up or adjusted down, that we make sure that we come on at the right price. Does that sound good to you? That we'll have another conversation about the price right before we go on market? Oh yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I was worried about. Like we decided on a price based on today's market, but what if it changes, right? So they might have had that unknown concern that they hadn't even thought of yet. It may be, okay, so what I require is a 3% commission or a 2% commission or whatever it is that you're comfortable taking with a listing. Remember, it's all negotiable. There is no average or set commission. And then I don't know if you've heard about the National Association of Realtors lawsuits that have come out. Here's what that covers. And then there's actually a document with the listing agreement that talks about that now, that talks about that commission is negotiable and different ways and why a seller may not want to not offer a cooperating agent's commission because it may limit their buyer pool. So it talks about that. So it's a good time to kind of go over that document, talk with them about that. It may be like, hey, in our area, most sellers are offering buyer's agents this percentage. Are you okay with that? Right? Do you want to offer more or less? How do you want to handle that? So having that conversation with them, fill in that, have them initial it, right? As you're going through there. You may want to confirm those. Perfect. So, you know, as part of this transaction, once I secure a buyer for the property and help you successfully sell your property, I'll receive 3% or 2% or 1% commission, whatever that is. And the buyer's agent or the agent who brings the actual buyer, who's representing the buyer, they're going to receive what we talked about, 2.5% or 2%, right? Whatever that is that you've talked about. So we want to confirm that. Perfect. Just initial here, right? We're just going to go through that. If you have somebody that's wanting to list on the high side or above what you think is the perfect listing price or market value at all, we may want to talk with them about perfect. You know, I'm recommending a price range of 575 to 590 or whatever that price range was. You're wanting to list at 610 and I'm willing to put it on the market at 610. But in the first 7 days, if we don't have at least 10 showings on your property, not counting the open houses, but if we don't have 10 scheduled showings or we don't have an offer in hand, then what I would like to do is set up that we're going to automatically reduce the price at that time down to 595 or 600,000, right? Whatever that first price reduction is going to be. And then if we don't have anything in the next 5 days, then I would like to set it up for an automatic one. We're just going to write those in here, right? So we can set it up that if they're going to list on the high side, we can set it up for automatic price reductions. That helps you set yourself up for success and helps them say, hey, she's willing to give it a shot. She's saying she's going to list it. We'll have the open houses and we'll market it at that price. But if it doesn't move, we don't want it just sitting there. Okay. So that's a good time to talk about that. The magic number script is this one here. So it's we have agreed that 610 should be the initial asking price. If we don't have at least 10 showings within the first week, do I have your agreement to adjust the price down to 600,000, right? It doesn't have to be drastic, just, you know, 5 to 10,000 is enough. Think of it like if something goes on sale, it always attracts consumers, right? We all love a sale. And since the actual selling price will come down to what a buyer is willing to pay and what you're willing to take, we can only adjust the price a little at a time until we hit the magic number. Let me explain. The magic number is not the selling price. It is the asking price at which the buyer feels comfortable making an offer. You will notice that I've written in our listing agreement that the price will automatically be reduced by $5,000 every calendar week, but it will not go below 590,000. Will that work for you? Right? So now we've got it. Hey, every week we've got an automatic price reduction in place of $5,000, but it's not going to go lower than their base price. You may need to assure and remind the sellers that you do not want to leave change on the table. After all, your fee is a percentage of the final sales price, and if necessary, review your target market and marketing plan. I'm going to copy and paste the magic number script in the chat box for y'all. Ta-da! All right. So that's a good way to get that automatic price reduction in there. If it's a slow market, right, you could extend that out. It could be like every 2 weeks versus every week. I read it with every 2 weeks. It's actually written with every 2 weeks. I read it with weekly if it's a hot market. If it's written with every 2 weeks, right? So you can adjust the time frames. You can also adjust the dollar amount in that magic number script to fit whatever fits the situation ultimately. And then we're going to get that listing agreement signed. We already talked about it. They said they've got another appointment. If they're like, oh man, I'm just not comfortable like signing that right now, that might be a good time to, can I ask you to tell me a little bit more about why you're uncomfortable with signing the listing agreement? Well, I just don't know. Okay, well, we talked about, right? We agreed on a price. We talked about our marketing, how I'm going to market your property to get it sold. My goal, right, is to get it sold for the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least hassle to you. Do we agree that I addressed all of those issues today? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We talked about the fact that you're not quite ready to go on the market now, that you want to do a little bit of work or you need some time to kind of declutter and prepare the home for sale. So we're going to try to aim for that first week of June to go on the market. It's actually going to go on the market on June 6th, which is the first Wednesday in June. I usually like to go on the market on Wednesdays. So, and you said that time frame feels good to you. Does it still feel good? Yeah, absolutely. Well, perfect. Why don't we go ahead and sign the agreement today? And if something changes between now and then, we can always move that time frame up. We can go on the market sooner, or if you even need more time, we can push that out a little bit more. This is adjustable. Like, this isn't set in stone. This is just our agreement of what our goals are as far as list price and on market date. And if at any time we need to change or adjust it, we can do so. Does that sound good to you? Oh, yeah, absolutely. You mean we can change this? Yeah, it's just our target date. Perfect. Oh yeah, absolutely. And then they sign away and life goes on. Okay, any questions about that listing presentation? If they don't sign it on that day because they're just really nervous or they just wanted to talk about it first, then we need to make sure that we follow up with them. And before we leave that day, we want to make sure that we have a set time that we will be touching base with them to talk with them more about moving forward. Perfect. I'll give you guys tonight to talk about it. I'll call you and check in with you tomorrow to make sure you don't have any additional questions or concerns. Right? So we're just going to address it and then we can move on. Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Oh, you said no, ma'am? Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Fabulous. In the chat box, you've got the screenshot of the price versus buyer pool. You've also got a copy of the magic number script, which is a great way to have those automatic price reductions in there. And that's all I got for you today. Tomorrow is the office meeting. So show up to the office for the office meeting. Enjoy your time there. Tomorrow evening is lead generation at 7 o'clock. And we're talking about events, hosting events for lead generation. So that'll be at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. And then we'll be back at it next week. Dun, dun, dun. Make sure you log your attendance. The link is in the chat box as well. And make sure that if you think of any trainings you would like to see, I think our summer plan is going to be based on tech trainings. So we're digging into some tech. So if there's some systems that you would like to understand better, get to know a little bit better, make sure you throw them in that suggested training box along with any others that you would like to see. And we'll get those on the calendar for the summer training series. Thank you all, and we will see you tomorrow.